don't think I'm asking for too much when I say that this, the new BMW M3 Touring, well, it needs to be a perfect car, really. All things to all people, in all weathers, all of the time. The ultimate combo of practical and potent. So, to find out, brought this one to the Swiss-Italian borders, and we're going to go and have a think about what truly makes a great estate car.
For the non-nerds, let's quickly explain why this is 2023's most wanted car. The M3 is the ultimate sped-up version of BMW's class-leading 3 Series. But in the M3's 37-year history, there's never been an estate version, or a touring in Beamer speak. The M division's preferred to concentrate on coupes and saloons, letting SUVs handle the people who want M division power with a huge boot. There's been a couple of M5 Tourings along the way, but their outrageous cool factor has always been massively outweighed by their pitiful sales figures.
And meanwhile, it's been, well, the Mercedes C63 AMG and of course Audi's history of RS4s that have run away with this very, very cool corner of the car market, the junior-sized, very fast estate car. But now BMW's decided to muscle in on their action, and I don't think their timing could have been better, really. I mean, for a start, BMW knows that this might be the M3 Touring's only chance to exist. All of this is going to have to be electric soon. And then look at the rivals. The RS4 is getting old now and it's quite boring. And the C63, well, that is in the middle of its own hybrid 4-cylinder identity crisis. So if this thing is the all seasons, all occasion perfection that we hope it is, then I think the question for BMW won't be why have you made an M3 Touring? It will be what took you so long?
Since the M3's been around for a few years now and we've already done a complete studio walk-around tour on this car, I'm not just going to bore you by reading the brochure. The key number you need to remember with the M3 Touring is 500. At one end you get just over 500 horsepower, 510 to be precise from the 3-litre twin-turbo straight 6, and a little bit more than 500 litres of boot space at the other end. Like all 3 Series Tourings, if you can't be bothered to wait for the electric tailgate to open, you can pop open the rear window. A brilliant idea, it's way handier and more useful than you might think. And once the boot's open, the seats fold down easily and you get 1500 litres of space. Okay, the Touring is a little bit less focused. Because of its long roof and that big hole in the end, BMW's had to fit bracing that adds 25 kilos to the body shell, and with all that extra glass and back-end bulk, the Touring is around 85 kilos heavier than an M3 competition saloon with 4-wheel drive. But it's still monstrously quick. Good for 0 to 62 in 3.6 seconds and 180 miles an hour flat out.
Now you do have to have the X-Drive 4-wheel drive system with the Touring, but I don't really think that's any bad thing. I mean, it's logical, surely. The whole reason that Audi ran away with the fast estate game was, for a while, it made the only 4-wheel drive name in town. And for me, I think X-Drive is better suited to a 500 horsepower super wagon than Quattro is, because this, fundamentally, is a rear-wheel drive car that can send 50% of power to the front in extreme circumstances, but most of the time it just wants to behave and it just feels like a rear-wheel drive car that just happens to have loads of reassuring traction. It's so smoothly integrated, you never sense that the car's snatching or being a bit indecisive about, oh no, where should I send the power or the torque? It just gets on with it. And the front end is so trustworthy. I mean, we just assume, or we have assumed for a long time, that 4-wheel drive cars understeer, but there's just none of that in the M3. I think even in the saloon, I'd sooner have an X-Drive, and in the Touring, it just is the complete package. But if that still offends your purest funny bone, then don't worry, because BMW is obviously very sensitive to that, and it has equipped the M3 Touring with a rear-wheel drive only mode. You go into the iDrive, you cross yourself, you turn all the traction control off, and then you send 100% of power to the back. I mean, it just covers all bases, doesn't it? Question is though, is ultimate hardcore handling really what a wagon is all about?
In this stunning part of the world, it would be rude not to give the M3 Touring a workout on the iconic Great St Bernard Pass. Sadly, the pass is closed this time of year though. Ironic really, given that this winter has been the mildest on record in Europe and plenty of local ski resorts are actually having to make artificial snow or rebrand themselves as mountain bike trails. Still, we're not tourists and that's not the reason we've come to this part of Europe, but we'll get back to that in a bit.
Because I want to have a quick talk about this car's interior, some of its technology and its price. The M3 Touring, as you might already know, is a very, very expensive car. It starts at about 80,000 quid, but you're going to want to throw toys at it. And whoever spec this one did, because it's got matte paint, it's got ceramic brakes, and it's got lots of carbon fibre, including these gloss back carbon fibre bucket seats that, well, if you actually use this as a wagon and put anything in here, this is all going to get scratched and ruined. Anyway, with all this on board, it's a £101,000 car. This is 100 grand BMW M3. Now, having said that, this does feel like a properly expensive car inside. The trim quality's fabulous, the leathers, all this stitching is just done beautifully, though I do find some of the gimmicks annoying. I mean, this carbon fibre gutter in the middle of the seat is just risible, and every single time you give a lift to a normal human being, you are going to have to explain why your seat has a speed bump in the middle of it. It comes so close to being classy, this car, but then you have things like the paddle shifter, which appears to be made of Lego, the steering wheel has two red sort of Shrek ears on it, and just the graphics of this. Do you remember when BMW did the coolest, crispest instrument dials of any performance car? And now we've got this just absolute mess. However, it's not the worst display inside this car.
All M3 Tourings get the new facelifted 3 Series dashboard, which transplants the huge 15-inch touchscreen from the iX. And that means that the innocent little heater buttons have been killed and their ghosts haunt the touchscreen.
In fact, the whole screen is just way too complicated, and though you can use iDrive down here to help out, it's obviously been configured to be jabbed at with the touchscreen. But look at this menu, all the icons, there's hundreds of them and they're all exactly the same colour. And then if I want to put my heated seat on or change the temperature, it's in the screen. I mean, what was wrong with just having a button?
One day, car makers will learn that a big screen that's fiddly to use while you're managing 500 horsepower on a snowy road makes a car feel cheaper and stupid, not more expensive and cleverer. But sadly, that day isn't today. Anyway, is technology what makes a great estate car? No.
The curse that the M3's made for itself over the decades really is that we expect an M3 to be the definitive last word in the 4-person seating supercar. They're supposed to be the benchmark. And it's almost like the M Division's been trolling us with this generation. How ugly can we make it? How complicated to operate? How annoying can we make the interior? Too heavy? An automatic gearbox that's more sluggish than before? How many elements can we add to the car that will wind up the people that love them? And they've really, really done a thorough job of that. And yet, when you get one of these things on the right road, it will still widen your eyes and make the hairs on the back of your hand stand up. It is still, despite the weight and the stupid technology and everything I've just said, it's still just really thrilling to drive. And this Touring with X-Drive, it just feels like a complete package. To be completely honest with you right now, no, I'm not missing the manual. No, I'm not finding the gear shifts a bit of a pain. And I'm finding it more trustworthy than the last generation of M3, which could get really vindictive at times. It feels like they've answered the criticisms of that car and then just given it the most desirable packaging possible. Only problem is that with this latest M3, so fast and so capable, I always find that whether it's the Touring, the Coupe or the Saloon, the speeds at which you have to drive it to feel like you are, you know, cracking the surface and getting the best out of the car are just absolutely ludicrous on the road. by the time it's really starting to impress you, it's also starting to terrify you. So if I'd been led up to this blindfolded, would I be able to tell that it's the Touring? Does it feel like it's got the heavier, creakier, less stiff, less focused body shell dropped on top of it? No, not in the slightest. I mean, maybe if you are the Stig or a BMW development driver and you live on a racetrack, then you might detect the 1% you've lost in absolute outright focus. But if you're a normal person on the roads with any degree of self or license preservation, no, absolutely not. It just feels like an M3. It feels like an absolute weapon, and it doesn't feel heavier or lazier. It's just cooler.
And that's the core reason we've all longed for an M3 Touring for decades. The image is achingly desirable, no matter how BMW styles it. That sense of being ready for everything. A super wagon that says, yeah, I like cars, I like driving and excitement, but I don't take myself so seriously that I wear racing boots to bed and I've forgotten about real life. About moving the family from place to place, taking rubbish to the tip, and occasionally walking the dog.
And that's the reason I've actually come to this corner of Switzerland in the M3 Touring. You see, this corner of the world is the birthplace of a legend among man's best friend. And, well, it's also the home of something that's also quite tough and faithfully on your side, powerful, ready for anything.
Yep, it's the home of the St. Bernard dog, the world-famous breed originally raised in a hospice in these very mountains, kept for the duty of rescuing stranded travellers trapped in the snow while making their way between Switzerland and Italy. Between the early 1700s and as late as the 1950s, it's thought that thousands of people had their lives saved by these gentle giants, who could sniff out people trapped in avalanches, dig their way to help, and even carry children to safety. St. Bernards served with the Red Cross during the First World War, and even though their era of heroic mountaineer assistance is now behind them, they're still seen as quintessentially Swiss as cuckoo clocks, Toblerone, and really secretive banking.
And that is the genius of the super estate car. For me, have your thrills when you're on your own, but the rest of the time, you got room for your furry best friend in the back. And that's why we didn't just bring the M3 Touring to Switzerland to tear up and down these gorgeous mountain passes. We came here to Barryland, named after the world's most famous, most celebrated St. Bernard rescue dog. And we're going to see what the professionals think to this as a dog wagon. Unfortunately, I can't actually take a real St. Bernard home from Switzerland with me, but we're not going back empty-handed. I've got this little fella. Stay. Good boy. When I get back to England, I've also got to give the M3 back to BMW as well, which is a shame, but that's not for 800 miles, so I don't have to worry about that yet. Is it a perfect all things to all people car? No, of course not. I still hate the way the front end looks. The interior is more annoying than the M3 was last year, and the fuel tank's a bit small. It's quite vulgar. Yeah, there's lots of things that are a little bit annoying. And yet, now we've got a touring M3, for the first time with this generation, I find myself wanting one.